My name is Odell Lewis.
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Sulphur Springs, Texas, 1923, June 22nd, 1923.
So how old are you right now?
I'm now 95 years old.
Do you feel like you're 95?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how a 95-year-old is supposed to feel.
Physically, what is it like to be 95?
If I had a new knee, it'd be just right.
What are the current problems you have with your knee?
I need a new kneecap. All I want for Christmas is a new kneecap.
What branch of the military were you in during World War II?
I was in the infantry, heavy weapons, infantry, heavy weapons.
What specific units were you in during your time overseas?
In World War II, I was with the 37th Infantry Division, Ohio National Guard Unit.
And what regiment were you with?
Beg your pardon?
What regiment were you with?
I was with the 148th Infantry.
And what company?
I was in the headquarters company. I was a anti-tank platoon. And
What was your specific job in the anti-tank platoon?
I started off as an ammo bearer, and later I became a driver for the Jeep that pulled the gun.
What was the highest rank you achieved by the time you left the service?
World War II, I only reached private first class.
But for your entire military service?
Entire military career, I retired as a sergeant first class E7.
What was the highest award for valor you received in combat?
The Silver Star. I received a bronze oak leaf cluster representing the second award of the Silver Star.
Where did you earn both of your silver stars?
In the Philippines on the island of Luzon.
Were you ever wounded during World War II?
No.
So, before we go any further into your combat experiences, you mentioned that you were born in Sulphur Springs?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Sulphur Springs?
Yes, I was there until I was 18 or 19 years old. I say Sulphur Springs. It was a farm community. Little Tyra is a farm community out there, but Sulphur Springs is the county seat, and we always just referred to that. But
talk to me about growing up in Latira.
We were, my family and I we were farm laborers. We worked for the farmers, and we hoed the fields, cut the grass, cut the hay, baled the hay, picked the cotton, and done what it could.
What kind of things did you do for fun as a kid?
We had baseball. We had softball, baseball, and hunting and fishing.
Before the war broke out, what were you planning on doing with your life?
I had no idea. I wanted to be a pilot, but I knew I didn't have the education for that, so I thought about going into the Army.
Talk to me about your memories of the Great Depression.
It was really bad. We had to live in old houses that sometimes they didn't have all the windows and all the screens. And when the rains caused the roof to leak, we put buckets on it to catch the water. We worked for the farmers. Farm labor then was 10 cents an hour. And cotton picking time was when we could make the most money. If you worked real hard, you could make more than what you could at day labor. And we tried to make enough money to last us through the winter. Winter time there was some income from catching trapping animals and selling the fur from the possums and the coons. And there was food on the table sometimes from the rabbits and squirrels. We ate a lot of squirrel meat.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
Did any of your brothers go overseas in the war?
No, they are big families. They got deferred.
So you were the only one from your family who went overseas?
Yes, I was the only one. I was the youngest, and they were all older than me and had families.
When you and your buddies would get together when you were teenagers, what kind of mischief would you guys get into?
Mischief? Oh, sometimes on April Fool's we'd pull pranks on different things. And on April Fool's Day, we'd always play hooky. Some of us would always play hooky, and it was hooky day.
What kind of pranks would you guys pull?
What?
What kind of pranks would you all pull?
One time when we gathered prior to Halloween, we piled up a bunch of dead wood there, and we built a big fire on the main access from our little country farm community. And we had all the traffic stated. And on another time we got E.C. Johns. He was the one that always did our pranks for us. We had him laying out on the street like he'd been dead or wounded, and somebody would stop and he'd get up and run, holler, Halloween, April Fool's or whatever it was.
Did you guys ever knock any outhouses down?
We never did. No, I've heard of doing that, but I was never any part of knocking over outhouses. And we used to do a thing and tie a club or something on the front door, and then put a string to it and pull it like you're knocking, and they come out and they can't see anybody, and it's one of our tricks.
Did you go steady with any girls when you were growing up?
Did I what?
Did you date when you were growing up?
I think I dated one on a movie date, and I went to a few of those country dances. I never was with any particular one. No.
What kind of things did teenagers do back then for dates?
Oh, they got in their dad's car, and if they'd been behaving themselves, and they drive their dates around in the country and stop and get some chewing gum or candy, and sometimes they'd venture take them all the way into Sulphur Springs and watch a movie.
How did you hear about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Oh, I got a story there. I heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor, and I was out in Nevada hunting mountain lions. Now let me make myself clear on that. I was in a CC camp then, and we had an educational advisor who had been a missionary in China, and he took us young kids out on nature trails, and the ranch had been losing some animals to mountain lions, so some of the older boys they were allowed to bring on rifles in case we saw any mountain lions. But we didn't see the mountain lions. But we came back and we heard it. When as soon as we got back, we heard they had made an announcement there that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. That was in Pioche, Nevada.
What was that like to hear that your country had been attacked?
It was really hard to understand. We knew about the war in Europe and all, but we didn't know he was really close to war and with Japan. In the CC camp, we had Army officers, and they were tickled to death because of the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. They was forced into reserve then. Now they would get to go back to regular duty with the regular Army. They weren't tickled to death about the cause of injuries, but was being able to get back with the regular service.
Take me through. How did you end up in the service?
I was drafted. Got deferred. I was working on two different airfields with a construction company, and I got deferred a couple of times. And I got deferred, and I was waiting for a friend from California to come to Texas, and he and I were going to enlist in the Navy. We were both wanting to go into the Navy, but before he get back, I was drafted. I was drafted into the infantry, and I was taking basic training at Camp Wheeler, Georgia, on an anti-tank gun.
Take me through your basic training. Take me through a typical day.
Typical day, you go down to the mess hall and stand in line, eat your meals. Then they load you up in a truck, and they take you to the training area. Or you fold on the field pack and you walk out there. So it depends on the length of the training area.
Talk to me about the physical regimen you experienced during basic training. Tell me about the difficulty.
Difficulties? I can't think of too many difficulties. Oh yeah, trying to get a M1 rifle back together. One of my first difficulties was trying to get the M1 rifle back together. Our squad leaders told us, drill sergeant told us, and don't try to take these things apart. You'll get all messed up, so we're going to tell you how to disassemble them tomorrow. So my friend John Lewis with me, and he said he knows all about rifles, so we could take this damn thing back and down, and we could put it back together. But my friend wasn't as smart as I thought he was. We wound up, and the lights went off in the barracks, and we went to the latrine and were putting together. Then the squad leader came in. Not the squad leader, don't keep your squad leader. The drill sergeant came in, and he said, "What you two do? Oh, you took the rifle apart, and you're having trouble putting it together. Well, I'm going to show you how to put it together." He showed us how to put it together. He says, "Now I'm going to sit and watch you put it together. Put it together. Put it together." We took it apart and put it together about 3 or 4 times. And he said, at clothing, he said, "Okay, man," he says, "that's all right." And next day at his class, when he was telling how to disassemble the rifle, he said, "If any of you have any problems in disassembling and assembling the rifle, just ask one of the Lewis boys. They know all about disassembly and assembly."
Was there any relation between John Lewis and yourself?
No, he was from Dallas, North Dallas there, and he's no relation at all. Well, we were together all the way over, and he got assigned to M Company when we got over there. We both got assigned to M Company, but the Captain Haley there, he looked at me and said, "You're too small to do what we need to do," and that was carry ammunition through the jungles in the Solomons. And he said, "I'm going to trade you for somebody bigger over there in the anti-tank platoon." So, to my enjoyment, I liked the anti-tank. I was trained in that in basics. So I was moved over to the anti-tank platoon. We come an ammo bearer over there, but the gun was so large we couldn't move it in the jungles there. So,
How tall were you back then?
a little over 5 foot, I guess. I don't know. I was real lightweight.
To you.
After basic training, we went to a camp up near Bastrop, Texas, here, Camp Swift, I believe it was, and that was supposed to be for advanced infantry training, but it was actually a hold to get into the pipeline to go overseas. And there was about 6 or 8 weeks where we were on our way to San Francisco to get on a ship to go overseas.
And take me through, how did you guys get overseas?
We went on the old troop ship Harris.
And tell me about your memories on the Harris.
Memory on the Harris, the biggest memory I have is when we crossed the equator, there was initiation. Everybody that had never been across the equator, they were referred to as pollywogs, and once you cross the equator, you have the honorable name of shellback. And we had a summons to reach the royal baby on the aft deck, and you had to go down and kiss his navel. He had a big navel there. And when you kissed his navel, they punch you in the butt with a trident, shocking you like a animal shocker thing. Then you had to crawl through a big canvas tunnel-like hose all the way up through the promenade deck to the boat deck. And on the boat deck, they had a hinged barber shop thing there where you sit down and he give you a royal haircut. I mean, you know what a royal haircut would be.
What?
It would be just a strip straight down the center of your hair, all the way. And then he loaded you. He will go to give you a shave, so he powdered all your face with all that lather. And then the barber chair was hinged, and it fell. He pushed you backward, and you fell to the boat deck. Free fall down to the boat deck. And the boat deck, they had a big canvas container of water there. You fell into the water, and a sailor grabbed you and held you underwater for a few minutes and pulled you back up and said, "Are you a shellback or a pollywog?" And no matter what you said, "Oh, that's a wrong question," and push you down there. "You're a shellback or a pollywog? Congratulations, now you're a shellback."
Was everyone forced to do this?
Everybody was forced to do it. So you had to get a natural GI haircut after that. Everybody had a GI haircut after that. He took a big swap down right down to the middle. The Navy, they got worse. They had to stand with before we got to the equator, they had the sailors that had never crossed the equator. They had them up in the crow's nest there with half-pint milk bottles looking for the equator. It's to simulate binoculars, they used milk bottles, and they were standing up there for hours looking for the equator.
So, How did you all pass your time on the troop ship overseas?
Mostly gambling, crap shooting, poker, and they had in the mess hall there. They had tables that you could push all the way up to the ceiling, and we were sitting in there. Sometimes they'd have movies, and that's where you had to people play poker or shoot craps. And
How long were you on the troop ship?
something like 25 days or something like that. We had a zigzag course. We had a cruiser. We had a destroyer going along with escort. And at that time they had a zigzag cruise across. It'd take longer to get than naturally.
What was the reason for the zigzag?
To avoid submarine tracking you. They get you going in a direction and they can call ahead and tell you what ahead. The troop ships are actually, the slower the troop ships can outdistance a submarine. And when he's underwater, especially.
So, from where did you all get on the troop ship, and where did the troop ship take you?
We left from San Francisco. They made us all go underground. We couldn't see the Golden Gate. We had to go go below deck so some spy wouldn't see how many troops were going. The troop ship took us to New Caledonia. It's an island off the east coast of Australia. It's part of the French islands over there. And we were there waiting for assignment to where we would be sent. Some would be sent to New Guinea, and some would be sent to the Solomons. I got sent with the group to the Solomons.
What were your thoughts, when you found out that you would be fighting the Japanese in the Pacific instead of the Germans? What were your thoughts about fighting the Japanese?
I like the thought of us fighting in a tropical area more than I would a place where it's cold. I never liked the cold. So, and the Germans have those big old tanks. The Japanese have very few tanks in there, all the little scrawny things. We were sent in as replacement troops for the men who was lost on the New Georgia campaign. I joined the 37th Division, Ohio National Guard, the Buckeye Division.
Had you heard anything about the 37th before you joined them?
Not one thing, no.
Where did you actually meet members of the 37th for the first time?
It was on Guadalcanal, and it was the 13th day of September, I believe. It could have been October, but I think September. And why I know it's the 13th, because they told us that on the 13th, the Japs general had lost a son, and he was sure to bomb Guadalcanal on all 13th. So we had slit trenches on each side of the tent there, so if there was an air raid, we could dive in there. That night, we got a red alert, and we knew that the Japs were coming. And as soon as the anti-aircraft guns went off, I jumped in that hole. I thought, sure as heck, there'd be bombs falling all over the place. And then I looked up, and all the old guys out there, they were pointing upstairs. Hey, they got him in the lights. They got him in the lights. So I felt pretty stupid, so I came out and joined them. It was just one little old plane, and we called him Washing Machine Charlie, and we had another name for him I won't mention here.
Tell me.
Huh?
Tell me.
Piss Call Charlie. He would show up at odd hours. usually in the late hours. That's why we call it washing machine, or washing machine Charlie was because of the noise of the. I thought it was I don't know what plane it was. I think it was a light bomber. It had a distinctive noise, engine noise, and then it go, and then when you release the bomb, you go, "Ugh." You hear the "Ugh," you know the bomb was coming down there.
So, what did the combat veterans of the 37th Division tell you when you first joined them? What did they tell you to expect about combat?
They told us stories about New Georgia. They had been in heavy combat in New Georgia. And our battalion, the 3rd Battalion, was cut off. They was on a roadblock to keep reinforcements from getting into Munda, main base there. And they got surrounded by the Japanese and got low on supplies, and they were there for about 2 weeks, and it got down to where they were 4 men to 1 ration. You open up a can of beans, you pass a spoon around. That's the way it was. And we got someone, I don't know if how much truth is what I'm telling you, but what I've heard from them, that Tokyo Rose claimed that we were cannibal, that we were cut off and we were surrounded. We were actually eating cannibalizing on the Japanese. And she said we are like a bunch of bloodthirsty barracudas. So our battalion, later we named ourselves the Barracuda Battalion. And there's certain little things you needed to do to become a barracuda.
Which is what?
Oh, you got to be hung up in a wait-a-minute vine. You got to be peed on by what we call mouse. We call them pea monkeys. We call them pea monkeys. And certain little things like that. Go on patrol.
For people who don't know, what was Tokyo Rose?
Tokyo Rose was a American lady. She got trapped in Japan when they had the war, so she was actually like ours. She was imprisoned, but she worked a deal to be a propagandist, other than going to prison. So she would tell us why are you still fighting, and why don't you give up, and tell us what a glorious day that the Japanese are having. But she also put in she played some records for us. We liked to listen to her. She was entertaining. Nobody ever took her serious. So she was, sometimes that was the best entertainment we got. She would actually play records, old American records for us, along with her propaganda. When I was assigned to the 37th Division, I was put in the 148th Infantry. I was in the 3rd Battalion. I was the anti-tank platoon, which is with the headquarters company, battalion headquarters.
So can you tell me about the role of the anti-tank platoon in combat?
The role of the anti-tank platoon in combat, in the Solomons, it was all jungle there, and there was no tanks or nothing like that to contend with. But our 37s, our 37 millimeter anti-tank guns were put on the defensive line, and we use what they call a canister round, which is like a big shotgun shell. You have a 125 marble-sized ball bearings mounted in rosin. And they're fired out, and at about 50 yards they break up and become just like shot. And it's for close-in fighting. It's for when they're running over your position or getting close. And we did not use them in the Solomons, but the Marines use them very extensively in Guadalcanal. Only combat I did was on Bougainville, that is the northern island of the Solomons. Then on Luzon in the Philippines.
What about Leyte?
Leyte was before Luzon. That was in the autumn of 44. And we got into Luzon on January 44.
45.
45, I beg your pardon.
But did you see combat in Leyte?
No, I didn't go to Leyte. That was a different unit.
So the 37th went straight from Bougainville.
We joined with. We were under Admiral. We were on Solomons. We went to Bougainville, and then we joined. We were under Navy control at that time, and we went as part of the 14th Marine Corps, which normally would have been the 14th Army Corps, but there's Marine General outranked our Division General, so it was the Marine 14th Corps. And but then I forgot what I was going to say next one.
You were talking about, did you go straight from Bougainville to Luzon?
We went to the Admiralty Islands, and we were there during Christmas. We joined MacArthur's 6th Army. We formed the 6th Army there, our division and all of this. And we went into a safe harbor there in the Admiralties. And there was 1,000 ships. They claimed 1,000 ships in that harbor. You went in through with a anti-submarine net. Then there was a ring of little islands, and those ring of little islands were safeguarded with mines. So it was a safe harbor all the way. And we were there for Christmas, 2 or 3 days for simile there, and we were there for Christmas 1944.
So, what weapon did you carry in combat?
We were crew-served weapons with mortars and anti-tank guns. We usually had a carbine or pistol. If you was a gunner, you carried a pistol and assistant gunner. And then if you were ammo bearer, you'd usually have a carbine. And sometimes we'd have both. Sometimes we'd have a carbine and a on patrols. I did a lot of patrolling there, and always carried a carbine.
So, take me through your first experience in combat.
My first experience in combat. You mean close encounter or what?
Yeah.
My first experience there was on Bougainville in the Solomons. We did not move our anti-tank weapons around. We left them on the defensive line. And our platoon was used for recon patrols and outposts. We had outposts out in front of the lines, out on the river. And we had recon patrols patrolling outside the perimeter. And I was chosen as a scout because I was small, and so was Krapinski. He was smaller than I was, actually. And we both, either one of us would be on as the lead scout on a platoon patrol. And usually we were 5 or 6 men on the patrol, recon patrol. And on one recon patrol, we had, it was later in the campaign there, and before I had any real close combat. And we had just finished a counterattack and drove the Japs back across the river up the Numa Trail. And that was the only way they could get into our position, and they were all beat up. We had the what we call the going up the Numa Trail for about 3 miles. Was on the counterattack, and we had what they call a rolling thunder. Rolling thunder is you go up and take position, and they lay artillery fire directly in front of you. Our people, our friendly forces lay artillery right in front of you. Then when that artillery ceases, you advance. And anything moving, you stick a bayonet in it or shoot it and keep going. Then you stop, and then another platoon comes from the rear, passes you, and takes position up ahead of you, so you get some rest in there. Then they place artillery in front of them, and they keep doing that up just over and over. And artillery's coming awful close, but they know what they're doing back there. So I was near the Numa Trail, so I didn't see too many wounded or dead Japanese. They were all on the sides. We got them across the river. Then the next day, they want to send a patrol out, see if there's anybody come back at the river crossing. Any Japanese come back. And Sergeant Thompson, Howard Thompson, he he was the patrol leader, and
other way, straight ahead. Yep.
And I was the scout, and I was leading them up there. It was just a short distance up to the river crossing there, but before I got up there was a knob there that you had to go across around before you could see the river crossing. And I held them back so I could get around there. I wanted to see that river crossing and check it out. And I didn't have binoculars with me, but I thought I could see something. But when I got up there, I held them back where they were safe, and I got around there. And the Japanese had snuck back in there during the night, and they opened up and they put shells right up above my head into the embankment over there, and I dived for that little ditch there. And he lowered his sight and tried to get me, but I was down there close, so he couldn't get me. And I just stayed there. I knew what they would do. They would call back. We had the mortar section back there, mortar platoon, and they put the mortar shells out there in a short time, and as soon as they started firing for effect, several rounds on that area, well, I said it's time to get back with the troops. And I may have saved all of the squads there, all of the patrol, because if he hadn't shot that machine gun, I would have walked right up where he was at in that river crossing. But I couldn't. They was very heavily hidden in that brush, and I couldn't see them. I didn't. First time I saw a dead Japanese was when I was pinned down there. There was one that they killed the day before, and he was laying out there on the trail. I just taken, and he was about 5 yards from me, I guess, out on the trail, and I was off the trail in the ditch. And out there in the hot sun, we have those old ants, the scavenger ants, and those old ants was working on his body, and I looked over there, and my God, it's a combat here now. I don't know. Maybe they had planned to recover his body. Maybe they sent somebody out there to cover his body and put that machine gun down there to back him up. I don't know, but anyway, they fired the mortars and either they killed him or he moved out. I would say they say. And next day we had people going across the river up a few hundred yards up the river to see if there's anything there. Nothing. And from that on, for the next few months, we had no problem with the Japanese because they stayed on their side of the island and we stayed on our side of the island. They didn't have the strength to attack again. First time I saw a dead American was when we landed in Lingayen Gulf on Manila. Not in Manila, on Luzon. We had my gun on the levee down there, covering the area over there, and they had the Japanese had dug in under a school there. They used a school, and they were holding out over there, and our rifle company had gone over there and engaged them, and they had killed some of the Japanese, and also we lost a soldier there. They had wrapped him up. We didn't have body bags, and they wrapped him up in the poncho, and then they brought him back to our position to keep him there till in the morning, and they would evacuate him properly the next day. It was nighttime. And I lay there and slept right beside that body that night with that gun. But that's the first. And you begin to realize this war is real.
Do you remember the names of any of the men in your outfit who were killed?
Yes, Shorty Brzezinski. I told you before there was two of us recon patrol scouts, and he was a little fellow, and he was on the patrol. And they run into a heavy patrol up on the river there, and he was killed there, and we had to leave him there because there's heavy fire there, and Sheely was with him. Sheely was with him, and we asked Sheely, and he said that Kabinski had half of his head blown off with a burst of and
with the what? With the burst of what?
With a burst of full automatic Nambu gun, I guess it was. And so we had to leave him. They were out greatly numbered, and I went on a combat patrol the next day to retrieve his body, and we got up there and we got his body and got it back. That's the second dead one. That's the only first dead American I saw. Yeah. And I won't never forget that one.
Shorty?
Shorty. I wasn't very close to him when they first took him in, and I went up to him later, but they said that he had been tied up against a tree and used as bayonet practice with the Japanese. I had very little close combat, but I had a stray round once that was just fired in our direction, I guess. We were sitting on the steps of a Filipino house. They have the houses on stilts there, and you've got 5 or 6 steps going up there. And I was on a lower step, and Herlicky, our ammo bear with a gun, he was on up above me on another step, and a stray bullet from somewhere just went whizzing over my head and just creased his butt. Just very minor damage to, but he was tended to there and later treated at the battalion aid station. But he was walking. He'd never spent any time in the hospital. They just got him patched up, back to work. Well, it's like this. It's like you driving a car. You're going down there. You're not thinking about somebody driving on the wrong side of the road and killing you. And that sort of is here. You go out there, you think, when you get out there, at first you think everybody's shooting at you. And later on, after you've been shot at a few times, I'm quoting from what some others have told me too. That, after you've been shot at a few times and missed, you think they're all shooting at somebody else. I mean, and when you're late, and if you've been up 24 hours or 36 hours, you kind of get in a dull mood. You just don't give a damn what happens. You're not afraid of it. It's when a lot of people get their Medal of Honor. They just go out and don't fear nothing. Just go out.
Besides Shorty, was there anyone else from your outfit killed in the war?
Anybody in my outfit? We had a lot of losses in the rifle platoons, rifle companies. We had heavy losses, especially in K Company. And but like myself, I don't have with the tank platoon. We were guarding the approaches to the areas, and we didn't do a lot of street fighting, but that was a dangerous area in Manila. But, you never knew. The Japanese couldn't imagine how fast we move, and we'd go past them. They'd be behind us and in front of us and behind us, and they'd try to get through us to get to their unit.
The terrain on Bougainville. What did Bougainville look like, and what was the physical terrain?
Physical terrain was on Bougainville was marshy land, flat, and a lot of swamps and heavy jungle. And it's the most remote. We landed at the most remote plot in there. Because Admiral Halsey, he the commander of the area of Solomons, he had seen the people that had been killed on New Georgia by us trying to take their airfields. And on Bougainville, they had about 5 Jap bases on the eastern side of the island. And they had most of the civilization was on that side. And on the west, it was all swamps and everything. And he decided that we would go to a swampy area. We'd build our own airfields. And the only way they could get to us was on the Numa Trail, which would not even accompany wheel or track vehicles, only foot traffic. So we built there, and the CBs and the Army engineers did a great job in draining the swamps that need to be drained and get our roads built. Roads were built with not crushed limestone, but crushed fossils, and they were white, and the Japs liked to fly down them and dump their. They knew at the end of the trail, at the end of the road, there would be front lines. But Admiral Halsey deserves a lot of credit. He saved a lot of Japanese lives and American lives, because those people, when they saw they could not defeat us, they stayed on their side of the island, and they were allowed to go home after the war, other than us trying to kill everybody or capture everybody.
So just tell me about your physical engagement against the Japanese on Bougainville. What do you remember about the combat that you experienced on Bougainville?
The only close combat I had was in Manila, when we moved into Manila, and it was street fighting. We were jungle trained and jungle troops trying to do street fighting, and sometimes we didn't do the right thing.
What do you mean?
I say the right thing. We didn't look at our rear too much. We not really thinking too much of our rear. We let the Japanese be trapped behind our rear, and then have to depend on all sides. And in one case, there the Japanese got it behind us, and they were throwing hand grenades at us. They was Navy personnel. They didn't have any weapons other than grenades. And one of the men from the rifle squad came over to us, and he and I decided we were going to go out there and we're going to do what they call recon by fire. We're going to shoot into those old buildings out there and see if we can hear any movement, and then we'll know where they're at. We can shoot in that direction. And we got out there and started shooting around, and the soldier that was with me, he fired, found one in there, and he started firing at him, and he ran out of ammunition, and the clip fell out, and a Navy captain, Japanese, came out with a sword, and he was about to run him through, and I stopped him with my carbine. And then there was another one in there, and he blew himself up. He was either trying to throw a hand grenade at us, and it went off in his hand, or he committed suicide. And most of the time, they're committing suicide. They keep a hand grenade for themselves a lot of the time.
And what did you see happen?
I just saw a mess of flesh and bone. I was like that. It's just smoke and all that. I just went on back to my gun. I left the dead captain there. I took his rank and his dog tag. He had a round dog tag, so intelligence might be interested in. And get back, I told my squad leader, I said, look at here, we got a 3-star general. He had 3 gold stars on a little lapel there with kind of a pink, border. And the squad leader said, no, that's not a 3-star general, that's a captain, Navy captain. So a Navy captain is the same as a colonel.
Do me a favor, sir, scoot your butt back. What do you call it?
Bougainville.
Bougainville.
Yeah, General McGrath, he gave us a lecture before we left, and he said, now, we're going to Bougainville, and they're ready for us. They're ready for us, and we're ready for them. Well, everybody called it Bogota. Oh, they had a volcano, and right in the center of we had a mountain chain between the two sides there, and it's right in the middle of the mountain range there, and right close to the trail at the pass there where the trail comes through. And the only effect we felt from it was earthquakes at time. And the first earthquake I saw was we were living in slit trenches. They say foxholes. Nobody ever lived in a foxhole, and we lived in holes. And I was outside, and I looked around, and you see those holes moving. That was really scary. But no damage done. There was no buildings there. There was nothing.
And where was this? But what happened to him?
Pardon?
What happened to that Japanese captain?
Japanese what?
What happened to the Japanese captain?
He was laid there, and they removed him, I guess.
No, explain how you stopped him.
What?
You stopped him.
Yeah, I shot him. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to go over that story later. But anyways, so that souvenir is from that Japanese captain.
That's the only thing I brought back. And if I'd had I knew he had a saber, but I thought, boy, I'm going to get one of those pretty Japanese sabers, swords. And but this here is more of a cavalry sword. The Navy didn't go for some of that Army stuff like they had been. They wanted to go a lot like our Navy.
What kind of souvenirs did most of the soldiers try to get from the Japanese?
Oh, sabers and flags, the battle flags, they're carried with them.
What did you think about the Japanese as you were fighting them? I mean, what did you think of them?
A bunch of sorry bastards. And they asked Admiral Halsey once, what are you going to do to shorten this war? He said, kill more Japs. So I never felt bad about those a few that I killed. And it's after you've seen some atrocities that they did in Manila, and the atrocity they did to Shorty Pazinski, I don't want. And Anna, the little nurse that got killed. No. But I'm not going to knock the teeth out and cut off their ear or do a damn thing like that.
What happened?
I kill them, get them out of the way.
Can you tell me the story about Anna?
Yeah, Anna was a nurse on battalion, and she was a second lieutenant in the Philippine Army, whether she was with the American hospital or with a Filipino unit, I don't know. But when Bataan was lost, everybody was going to have to surrender or going to Corregidor. They told her to go home, take off your uniform and go home, burn your uniform, and you can live now a normal life with a civilian. You won't have to go to prison. And so she went home. She did not burn her uniform. She hid it from the Japanese. And shortly after we arrived in Manila, she got it out, washed it, starched it, shined her second lieutenant brass, put it on, and went out to see what she could do as a nurse. And we were heavily engaged then at Jones Bridge. We were trying to take Jones Bridge before the Japs blew it up. and they were having a lot of casualties. The Sergeant Whelan, I was with Sergeant Whelan's squad there, and on the anti-tank gun, we were covering a street on the right flank of them, in case any vehicle tried to come up there. And nothing happened there, and Sergeant Whelan says, "Lewis, you want to go with me? We'll go up and help them in evacuation if they wounded up there." They claim that street is mine. They can't get vehicles up there. You're using litters, carriers, get them out. We went up there, and when we got there, we saw this little half-pint Japanese lady. She was real small. She had on a white uniform. She had on some brass, second lieutenant brass. She had organized a group of Filipino men. They had taken off some doors and put bamboo poles underneath the door, and they were planning to evacuate the wounded in that way. So Sergeant Whelan and I, we joined up with them. Sergeant Whelan and I joined them, and we moved back about 3 blocks, I guess about 3 blocks to our battalion aid station. And there was rifle fire coming from the cross streets there, and we had to hurry back across those cross streets. And we did that, then we carried some ammunition back up. When we went back up, carried some ammunition, and we made a second trip down. And we, about halfway down there, well, there was fire coming from the street over there, and I saw Anna, that little nurse. She went down. I thought she had stumbled, but she had been shot. We put her on the door there, and with the soldier there, and got her to the battalion aid station. They couldn't do nothing with her. She was too far gone. But they suggested that we take her to a Filipino first aid station. All they did was identify the remains or everything, and try to evac with her. But she didn't make it, and at least getting her back there, I'd have helped from a bigger guy than me. He helped with get one of her friends. He's the one to tell him about all her history and everything, and we had to go and talk there, and then afterwards, he told me a lot about her. I knew her name was Anna. I couldn't remember what her last name was.
How old would you say she was when she was killed?
Well, she was a second lieutenant when the war started, 53. She's probably in early 20s.
When you were talking to me about the story,
yeah,
you had mentioned something about a Japanese lady in white. Maybe you didn't mean to say Japanese. Who was the person in white?
Maybe I should have said Filipino.
But who was the person in white?
The Filipino, the nurse I was just telling you about.
Anna.
Anna. She was white.
So
she was the only female in white that I ever told her.
Now, do you believe the Japanese targeted her?
No. It's just they just throw plunging fire from one place to the other. We're on this side, they're on that side. Shoot over that direction. On the straight rounds.
Did you have any experiences liberating any of the prisoners of war of the Japanese?
No, what they did, the 1st Cavalry did a great job of their going into San Tomas, and they liberated about, I think it's 4,000 there. Then the 11th Airborne, they did a remarkable job. I mean, it was great what they did. They liberated the one in Los Banos, southeast of Manila. Only it was on a lake, and they went across in Amtrak. Amtrak can travel on land and water. They went across land, then went across that lake and surprised those Japanese. The Japanese, we learned that they went outside the fence and did exercises and sports early in the morning. We got that information from the guerrilla unit there. So the airborne made a drop at midnight, and they marched, I think, about 5 miles, and was waiting on the outside of this, in hidden position outside the gate, outside the wire, until they come out and started doing that thing. They stacked the rifles against the fence, and they were easy prey. And they went in and they took care of the. At the same time, the airborne had made a jump east of Manila, had a big Jap concentration over there, and they had made a jump in there, blocking them off from the blocked them off from the prison there. And
Cabanatuan?
pardon?
Cabanatuan?
Yeah. And they got them out on those Amtraks. I got pictures in there within my folder there of them. And it was really a great. I think it was over 1,000 there. These were civilians, American civilians and Allied civilians. I think that's what it was.
Did you ever use grenades in combat?
Yeah, not I, but I don't think I can't remember using a grenade, but we had men on the old, one time on the old Spanish Trail. It was in High Mountain Pass, and they were up on it was an old dirt road they used to use before they got the modern pass there, and we were all in a hold. Well, I wasn't there. I was back in the rear. I took a Jeep up every day with the mail and whatever needed to be delivered up there. And we had, I got a picture I'll show you of my old friend John Trevorrow, called the Big Stoop. And we had 2 men in a hole, and one would be awake at all times. We had grenades, a lot of grenades in there. So if the Japs was on the climb up toward us, they had to get to us. They had to climb up there, and it was easy to throw a grenade across over there, across the road, was right by the outside the road, right by the overhang there. They woke John Trevorrow up one morning when he was, well, I said one, what was it? I don't remember what time it was, but it was his time to watch. It was his time to watch, and he's woken out of a dream or something, and he reached over there and started pulling hand grenades and tossing them all down. So that was a story there we keep telling about John Trevorrow. We were going out what they call train fire. You shoot into the building and see if there's any movement around there, and see if anybody's shooting back at you. It's kind of dangerous stuff to do, but you got to do it once in a while. And he was doing that, and the last round he fired from his M1 rifle, his clip came out and it made a big zing, and that's when the the officer came out with a sword and he was about to run him through while he was trying to reload, but I stopped him with my carbine. And the officer with this saber fell to the ground, and I made sure he was dead there. Then we heard a big explosion and looked over there, and another officer had blown himself up, or he had set off a grenade trying to throw it at us. I don't know how. It probably was a suicide grenade. They like to keep one for themselves, and in case of avoid capture. And then I went back to my gun and joined my squad, and everybody laid down to take a little nap. After you kill 2 people, you don't think you can lay down and go to sleep, but you can. Another day's work and a dirty war. And my squad leader, he woke me up. Lewis said, that I hear some moaning out there from that Japanese shots, and somebody's going to have to take care of it. I said, Sarge, you know nobody's going to come out here and treat him. And besides that, I don't want anybody approaching him when he's still clutching that rifle, that bamboo gun. If daylight comes, I'm going to approach him from a different direction. And if he's still living, I'll see if we can get some maintenance here, get some medical attention to him. But he's groaning out there. He's groaning out there. Somebody's going to do something. So I did what you do to a dog that's suffering in pain. You go out and finish him off. And that's what I did.
How close did you get to that Japanese soldier?
I was about 4 or 5 yards from him, but I was close enough to see part of his body in the bushes there. So I just emptied about a half a magazine on him. And Sergeant Pazelic never told anybody else in that squad about it. And Herdliska, the one that got shot in the butt, me and him was talking later, and I was kind of teasing him about getting shot in the butt, in a natural way. And he said, well, I don't go out and shoot dead Japanese. So nobody ever told him I went out and finished him off. He thought I went out and shot dead. I was doing what my squad leader told me to do. That's what you do, you do what your squad leader tells you to do. The Marines done a lot of that. They did a lot of that on the trail. I ain't thinking. One of the Silver Stars I received had to do with I guess it was a 40 millimeter firing from the port area up there, just haphazardly shooting in our direction. It hit my Jeep, which we used to pull the 37 millimeter gun, and I had 5 boxes of ammunition stacked up there in the back of it, and wooden boxes, and the shell was a chemical, and it set the boxes on fire. And I had a pretty good blaze there, but I realized it took a lot of heat and duration for it really to explode the shells. Threw them off and got some water from I carried a 5-gallon can of water there and put them out with some smothering with some blankets. And got the fire put out and got the Jeep put into a covered position in case they fired any more fire to come in. And that was, this action here was in addition to a previous comment I made about Silver Star medal. First, I got my shoes. I was washing my feet when the shell came in, and I had a new pair of combat boots up there. We had just been issued regular shoes, and we hadn't received our combat boots. And some of the people were wearing leggings, but we were never forced to wear leggings. And in the Solomons, you didn't want to wear them because of ventilation. And I didn't want to lose those boots. So that was the first thing. I was secured my boots, then I got the ammunition. I knew the ammunition could wait a little while before it exploded.
How did you find out you were getting the Silver Star?
Beg pardon?
When did you find out you were going to be awarded the Silver Stars?
I guess squad leader, everything comes down through rank. I guess it's a squad leader, I don't know. But another story I'd like to tell you, there was no Silver Star mentioned. It wasn't, I think the squad leader, I think he got the accommodation letter in his 201 file, letter of recognition or something. But he should have got a Silver Star. We were near the end of the war, and we were up in the Calcan Valley there. And the Japanese were up in the hills. They chose to fight in the hills, and we closed in to them close enough to make sure they stayed in the hills. And we just waited out the war. And we had our gun, our 37 millimeter anti-tank gun, on the road outside the battalion perimeter, and to protect against any vehicular traffic the Japs might throw at us. And I was squad leader, Sergeant Pazelic. He and I took the first watch. We always took the first watch and the last watch. If nobody showed to wake us up on the last watch, somebody went to sleep during the night. So he and I was on the first watch, and it just gone dark a little while, and everybody else was asleep. And what we do, we have one on the gun, looking through the sight, looking downrange, not through the sight, but looking through downrange to the field of view. And we have one sleeping in between the trails. You open the trails up, and you have one there if they need a ammunition loader, well, he can reach over and get you and load up. But one guard is enough. So about 10, 11 o'clock, I don't know what time it was, Sergeant Pazelic reached back and tapped me on the shoulder. And he didn't have to say a word. I won't use a hand signal, he just pointed in that direction over there. And I got up and looked, and there was two silhouettes coming toward us on the road. I guess about 10 or 15 people, half on one side, half on the other. And they were unmistakable Japanese. And I knew what to do to put the canister around it for close combat. Then Pazelic, he waited until they were within about 50 yards, between less than 50 yards, 30 yards maybe. 50 yards, it's big range, it's 30 yards. And I was there, when's he going to shoot? When's he going to shoot? And he fired the first round, and I stopped shoving those canister rounds into the breech and closed the breech. And when you got it loaded, you pat him on the shoulder, you're ready to fire. Pat him on the shoulder, ready to fire. He fired about 4 or 5. And the canisters, about 135 ball bearing type shots. they're pulled together with rosin, and they go out about 20 yards and they bust up into like a shotgun spray, and they just knock everything down in close range. And after he got shooting in the rifle squad over there, they started shooting in the same area there, and in 10 minutes it was all gone. They were all dead there. We learned later that there was a battalion of Japanese. They were trying to hook up with another battalion of Japanese because they were so low on strength. And they got on the wrong road. They were on the wrong road. But if we had not seen them, they would march right into our battalion lines there. And there would have been a hell of a firefight and be dead on both sides.
How many Japanese do you believe were killed?
It was the advance party. It's usually, I'd say, I usually send a squad or a platoon. It'd be 12, somewhere around 12 or 15, something like that. But then they were the scout for the larger party. They were further back. They were waiting to see if they run into anything. And we always do that, all armies. And then they have connecting files in between units, and they have advanced units like that. They had to reconnoiter. But
did you see the Japanese that next morning, the bodies, or?
I just saw them from a distance. And what they do, we allow the Filipinos in the area. There's villages in that area. They come in and they bury the bodies and they get what they can. If they got any watches, it's all their fault. That's all theirs. We don't touch them unless it's for intelligence reasons. Intelligence might want to search them for something, but no, they just lay there to the civilians take care of them. And we didn't stay there. We moved back that same day, I think. We didn't have to stay there. The war was over in a few days. It's just a damn shame it had to happen to them and to at that time, you know. They would have been put in prison and going away home in a few months.
Can you describe the destruction in Manila?
Yes. Manila, they claim, was the most destructive capital city outside of Warsaw in Poland. The General Yamashita, head Japanese of the army, he chose to leave Manila. There's no way to defend it. And his mission was to go into the hills and keep us occupied so we would not be a part of the initial invasion of Japan. We had the whole he was trying to hold the whole 6th Army there in the Philippines. And that idiotic Navy admiral, he wanted to stay there and fight to the last man, destroy what they can, and they either died in combat or they committed suicide or forced us to kill them all. And in 2 of the last holdouts, one was at the walled city, they had Spain built that, and it's 14 feet thick walls, high walls, and one main gate going in. And they had people living in that. It's like a little part of town. And they had something like 1,000 hostages there, and they were using them as shields. Would not surrender after pleading to surrender. And they wouldn't surrender, but they chose to go into the dungeon there. And when they went in the dungeon, and the hostages were allowed to exit from the walled city, and some were wounded. Our troops carried them out and handed on them. I got pictures of in there. And they chose to commit suicide. What they did, they went into the dungeon, and we put gasoline and other flammables in there and set them afire. That, another instance was in Manila Bay. They got what they call I got pictures of all that too. And they have what they call a concrete battleship. It was built by the Army engineers before the war. And it had, I don't know what the caliber of the guns were on there, but small calibers as far as warship guns. And they got lower area there for storage and living quarters. Some of the holdouts, a lot of the holdouts, went aboard that old relic and chose to defend where they had. I don't know if anybody had any rifles left or not. They chose to die there. And they went below again. They put gasoline or gas or something and set it afire, and they all died there and burned to death in the lower parts of that thing.
Did you see that happen?
Nope. I mean, I was at another part of Manila Bay at that time, but I did see the dive bombers, the people holding out on those old wreck boats. They would go out there, and that's the only place they could go. You know, they could go out to the old boats that were beached, or they beached a lot of old boats to block the harbor there, and they'd go out there. And I saw a squadron of dive bombers go in there and bomb those boats. And what got me that day, and I'll never know the answer to it, I guess, but it was just nobody shooting back at them, so the dive bombers just go down there easy like and drop their bombs and go on their way, and without any great effort to evade any counterfire. And but there was one. I noticed one bomber. He went down there and he went full fast. I don't know. He come out of there like he was bat out of hell, and he just dived real fast there. And he must have blacked out because he dropped his bomb, and the bomb went on one side of the ship, and he crashed in the other. I always thought that he either blacked out, I don't know what happened, or that was his first mission, and he was going to really do it like they did it in regular combat, you know. And he couldn't pull out of it, and he crashed on the other side. On my 90th birthday, my niece told me that, I bet you live to be 100. And I told her, I said, you mean I only got 10 more years to live?
What did she say to that?
Oh, her jaw dropped a little bit. She was stammergasted a little bit. Stammergasted, we use that word up in northeast Texas. I don't know what it is.
Stabbergasted?
Stammergasted. When you're confused, we call it being stammergasted.
Now tell me, sir, what was the highest level of education that you received?
The 8th grade.
What happened after 8th grade?
I was going to a country school, and there was no way to finish high school. You had to go into the county seat, which was 16 miles away. And I was interested in getting in with the CC camp at that time. We had the 3Cs for the youth, the employment, and I joined the CCC.
Can you talk to me about your experiences in the Triple C camps?
Well, it was sort of a welfare organization that President Roosevelt made. They take youth, and it's for a 6-month tour, and we'd work in the parks or something, public works. We had a camp just like in the Army, and we had Army officers, and we made formations and drilled and like that, but we weren't allowed to salute. Removed our hat and put over our heart removed our cap and removed over our heart when we stood retreat at evening. But it was sort of halfway military and half civilian.
So I'm just going to jump right back into the war, okay?
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the living conditions you experienced in combat?
Living conditions in combat, usually we would, nobody ever slept in a foxhole. We called them slit trenches. And you was moving about daily, well, you just build enough to lay down in and get below the surface of the ground so you wouldn't be exposed to artillery fire, air, and you could fight from that position, and you could sleep in that position. And over there in the South Pacific, you didn't move around at night. You stayed in there till you got daylight. If you moved around, you might get shot. So you went in your little hole there and you stayed until, and sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 men in one hole, and you could change off with keeping awake. On guard. One would be on guard and the other would be sleeping.
Talk to me about the importance of having someone staying awake on guard during the night.
Oh yes, Japanese were very good at infiltrating, and you had to have somebody watching. If you were in a hole like that, the squad leader would show you where to dig your hole, and he'd perform a defensive around the platoon area there, and then he would expect you to have someone awake at all times there in that position. If you were just staying there temporarily, well, you'd be alone, and you'd sit there, just big enough to get you down below the ground for artillery or mortar fire.
How do you keep yourself awake at night after a long day of fighting when you have to stay awake on guard? How do you keep yourself awake?
It's not too easy. Some of them lose control of it and you can doze off. And the one way, we smoke a cigarette and put it between your fingers, and when you feel this thing starts burning, well, you know it's you've started to doze off.
How did you smoke in the service?
Oh yes, I smoked in the Army when in combat. So sometimes the best thing that happened to you all day was a cup of coffee and a cigarette.
How many cigarettes would you smoke in a day?
Oh, roughly around a pack, I guess, sometimes more.
Did the cigarettes help to de-stress you?
Oh yes, yeah, that's something to do, something to do. And you get when we work detail, you get a 10-minute break. What you gonna do in 10 minutes? You can't go to the bathroom every hour, so you get something to do. So you smoke a cigarette. The old work sergeant there in charge, he would say, "Okay, take 10, smoke them if you got them."
Talk to me about your experiences with the tropical diseases out in the South Pacific.
Oh, we had what we call jungle crud. Everybody had jungle crud. We had ringworm, and we had jungle rot. Jungle rot is actually the flesh of your body rotting away in spots, big spots, the size of an apple like that. Not that it's so flat. It's not as thick as an apple, but and calamine lotion. That's about the only thing they get for it, and that's old pink stuff you smear on you. And all around your waist where you sweat and there's no ventilation, that's where that jungle crud would inhabit itself. And we had the saying of, we had greetings a lot of times. "Hello, cruddy buddy." We would refer to everybody as cruddy buddy sometimes.
What was it like to have the jungle crud? Like, what was it?
It was, like I say, around the waist. We had to wear the best way to avoid jungle crud or ringworm or any of that is loose clothing, where your clothing is not against your body and sweaty. And when you're sweaty and you're like around your waist, and that's where it will infest you.
What about your experiences with the diseases in the Pacific?
I never had any problem with, I never had
Malaria?
I never had malaria. We had the Atabrine tablet, and you're supposed to take that every morning, and your squad leader he was responsible for you taking it. And when we had a privilege of a base camp where we had a first sergeant would pop that in your mouth as you went through the chow line. You open your mouth and you throw it in. And I took it regularly, and I didn't have any malaria until I came back to the States, and they said take it for 30 days after you get back. And after I took it 30 days, I broke out with, after I quit taking it, I broke out with malaria chills every other day for about a week. We landed in Lingayen Gulf on Luzon in January the 5th, I believe. We marched all the way to Manila. It took a month to get down there. And it was over 100 miles. And the only bath we could have is getting into the river once in a while. Down in the Solomons, there was no women or civilians around. We just get out. Every afternoon I had a shower. You could just have a cold shower about every day, just wash yourself off. And we had creeks. We had a creek right there by our base camp, and we could wash there. In Manila, we slept in the streets for about a month, the whole part of February, and there was no rivers to water, no rivers to go, and there's no rain, and we just wearing the same clothes for over about a month there.
What's that like to wear the same clothes with no access to a shower for over a month?
You get kind of smelly. You get used to it, and we wash up. We had water to wash up and shave and wash our hands. We could wash our feet and do what we call a hose bath out of a steel pot. But that's about it. We made it all right. And we had extra clothes, but they kept them back in our battalion. Our duffel bag was kept back in the battalion supply, and we did get occasionally a different set of clothes. And in Manila, sometimes we would stay in a place for about a couple of days, and the Filipino ladies would come out there and do your laundry for you. And I'd take it, beat it up, and bring it back to you. I had the experience there once that we were in a little sort of a warehouse thing. We actually could sleep inside over a roof, had a little roof over our head, and then kind of relaxed because out of sleep, instead of sleeping on the street, you sleep in a hard floor and a roof over your head. And we were there a couple of days, and we got this family that were across the street to do our laundry, and the next morning I went to pick up laundry, and I was talking to this pretty little girl there, and she followed me out to the intersection there between us and the family over there, and we were standing at that intersection and talking, and her and I, and Sergeant Rodman, he said, "Lewis, get your butt back over here." But he used a different word than butt. And we're going to move out. Okay, Sergeant. So I got back over there and started getting the things ready, and the little lady went back to her house, and just as soon as I left, these artillery or mortar shells started hitting in that same intersection from the Japanese, and I have the saying that Sergeant Rodman may have saved my life. If he hadn't hollered at me, I would have stayed there and talked to that sweet little thing. 2 or 3 rounds came in there, and that was it. There was no large concentration.
What kind of food did you get on the front lines?
They were very good at trying to get us much hot meals as you could, but it was not always possible. And we had C rations. If we were going on a patrol, we usually carried a K ration. That is a package thing that you could put in your pocket, and it consisted of a K ration consisted of a meat unit, something there, and crackers and cheese and candy. And we had a saying there in the breakfast unit. They had a fruit bar, and then this the noon meal, they had a can of cheese, and we claimed that prune dish they had the prune thing they had in the morning would make you go, and the cheese would make you stop.
I mean, but would the rations, would they actually fill you up, or would you always be wanting more food?
No, it's fairly, no. We had one thing that in the C ration, the evening meal was corned beef hash, and that was the worst thing of the whole thing. People like to throw that stuff away a lot of times, you know. And one of our outposts, they were using, on the outpost, you usually C rations and K rations all the time. You don't get a hot meal out there. And they had Baker Company's outpost is out front of lines there, and they had thrown a lot of those old sea rations, corned beef hash into to the dump there, garbage dump. And when the Japanese made an advance on us and took over the outpost, they dug up everything that had a marking on it. It was a latrine. If the latrine was closed, you put the latrine closed, and we put closed the garbage dump. We put garbage dump, but when they came and overtook our outpost, they dug up everything, and they had rations there. They ate our throws away stuff, so. The order came down from then on that any time you throw garbage into a dump, you open it up before you throw it away whole. We don't want to feed the Japanese army. A lot of times they would bring hot food out to us on the street, and we would get our canteen, our mess kits out and form a line, get food. And we'd find a place to sit down to eat it, and as soon as we sat down to eat it, there would usually be a small child there, and most of the time it was a young boy, and there was so much bodies and dead animals laying around, and there's so much flies on the street at that time, and the child would bat the flies away from you so you could eat your meal, and then they would appreciate you leaving some for them. And I never finished a hot meal on the streets. I was always a kid there waiting for the leftovers, and he would put it in a little bucket-like thing and take it home to his family.
What was that like for you to see such poverty among these civilians? These children. What was that like for you to see?
It was heartbreaking. It's kind of hard to describe. It's just how can this stuff happen? But they were shut off during the war, and they didn't have any way of getting supplies, and then it just the people that had money and positions and everything, they managed to have more, I'm sure. The people we saw were the real peasant, lower class, the lower income people.
Can you talk to me, sir, about the patrols that you went on in combat?
The patrols, all my patrolling was done in the Solomon Islands, and there was jungle fighting all the way, and we had the perimeter set around our battalion, landmines and barbed wire entanglements. But outside, we had patrols patrolling outside the perimeter, and we had outposts up on the river. And I was very small, and I was especially good at moving through a little better moving through the jungle than some of the big fellows. And so I became our platoon was, we were in a tank, but there was no threat of any armor there, and our guns were placed on the perimeter, and our platoon was used as an outpost and outside the perimeter patrols. And there were two of us, Shorty Pazinski and I, and we was scouting for all the patrols that came from our platoon. And it was slow going through the jungle. Most of the time it was It was just going out and ahead of the outside the perimeter and seeing if there's any contact with the Japanese out there. And usually dead reckoning, we go out so many 100 yards one way, then we go so many 100 yards the other way. And I was pretty good in if I you had to go through a thick jungle, and if I went off in one direction to avoid a wait a minute vine, well, I could get back on the regular course. And at one time on the Numa Trail, we had gone into our battalion had gone into an offensive on a counterattack, and we had pushed the Japanese across a river up there, and they were in full retreat, and they were going back to their side of the island. And we were sent on a patrol the next morning to see if any of them had come back at the river crossing. And I was scouting for the patrol, and before I got to the river crossing, it was still not in sight, and I held the patrol back until I could go forward around this bend to see if there's anything that I could pick up on that without exposing them. And they were, the other side of the river was a very thick jungle-like, and our side was a sandbar. We had a sandbar with a cliff right behind us. And I stayed there for a while trying to pick up anything out there. I couldn't see anything, and I was about ready to bring the patrol forward, and all at once, bang, 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 some machine gun bullets come whizzing over my head into the bank over there. So I dived into a ditch, and he lowered his sights and he tried to get to me, but I was down too close. The machine gunner, if he had waited a little bit longer, I would have brought the patrol forward, and he could have possibly got the whole, about 5 or 6 men there in the patrol. He could have got the whole bunch. The machine gunner would normally start shooting at the back and move forward if he was smart enough, but he saved us by firing at the first one that came by. But I stayed there until the patrol sent back for mortar fire, and they brought mortar fire onto that position, and I had to adjust. So I was pretty close by, so they put the mortar rounds definitely over the target, and they creeped back to creeping fire. And as soon as one landed on my side, I knew the next time they would be firing for effect. As soon as there was a volley of fire, I was getting the hell out of there. And so when they started firing, when I fired 3 or 5 rounds there, I opened up. I moved back with the patrol, and everybody had gone back except the patrol leader and one man there, the other scout. And so nobody was injured in that incident, which could have been fatal.
Tell me, sir, when you were in the ditch, and the Japanese machine gunner, did he continue to fire at you when you were in the ditch?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How close did the bullets get?
Oh, I guess on that, like I say, they had we were kind of like on the sandbar, and they had a little cliff on the side, clay tipped, I guess. And I guess it'd be about 3 or 4 feet up above me.
And how long would you say this whole ordeal was?
Oh, somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour, I guess, somewhere in there. There was a dead Japanese right across the trail there. It was a trail leading right along the river there, and he had been shot the day before when we made the counterattack, and he was laying there, and that was the first one I saw, and like that. And we have the old scavenger ants, those big old black ants. They were all over him and consuming his body. And terrible thing to see. It was bloated up, bloated up.
Besides this one incident you told me about, when you were on patrols, were there other times that you got engaged against the Japanese? Or was this the only time that the Japanese fired at you on patrol?
This was the only time. The others were all just about routine stuff.
On the other patrols you would go on, would you be just looking at the Japanese positions, or you just never encountered Japanese on the other patrols?
We never encountered them. They liked to stay on their side there, and we were the only contact we had with them was the Numa Trail, or they would occasionally go down the river there where we had the outpost there, and it was. But no, I came back. From the outpost one time, and we run into some Japanese. It was we went on a patrol. We were coming back to the base camp from there, but it was raining, and they were all huddled up there, and the Sergeant Whelan was and he wanted to go down that trail. He said he heard something, and we went down there, and they were all huddled up. It was raining, and they were trying to keep dry. But there's a great number of them, and there was few of us, about 5 or 6 people. So we made a notation where they were, and reported that. And they sent out a combat patrol the next day, but they had all gone. They had disappeared.
What was the reason you guys didn't fire at them? Because there was more of them?
Yeah, there was a great bunch of them. They looked like a platoon of 30 or 40 of them. And we had very little ammunition anyway. We didn't have and on a recon patrol, you avoid contact. You're there to look. If you see something, you report it. You don't engage it.
Absolutely. Could you please talk to me about your experiences using the 37 millimeter, the anti-tank gun, in Manila? Were there times that you guys used it in Manila?
The anti-tank gun, they use the little 37 millimeter. It's a real accurate weapon. It's small, but it works real good in street fighting. We could fire a high explosive shell, which is about the same thing as about the same explosive as a hand grenade, a large hand grenade. It shoots into, you could use an armor piercing, which would penetrate about a 1/4 inch of armor on a light tank, but it wouldn't do nothing about those big German tanks. And we had the other shell was a canister, what we call a canister, and it's like a big shotgun shell. You have a 125 marble-sized ball bearings encased in rosin, and it is fired for close combat. And when you're being overrun, the Marines used it very successful on Guadalcanal. And it's close in, and you fires out about 25 yards, and it breaks up into just like a shotgun, a big heavy-duty shotgun, and it'll take care of anything in that range for 25, 30 yards. And we had in Manila, the high explosive shell was good. You could put, a lot of times the Japanese fought from dwelling houses, they fought from office buildings, they fought from everywhere, and you could just lay a shell in any window you wanted to, any window where they were firing from. And it is very accurate, very accurate weapon. And then the canister round was used. We only used a canister round one time when, near the end of the war, we had the air gun was usually outside the perimeter, and we were mainly guarding against any tank or vehicle that the Japanese might want to move. That Sergeant Pazelic and I were on the first tour guard around 9 o'clock in the evening, and we had two men on the gun at night. One was almost by the sight there and looking, not through the sight, but looking down the range so he could get on the sight and fire the gun. And we had one that was sleeping in between the trails. What the trails, you open up the trails and you sleep. You could have one sleeping there ready to be a loader for you. And Sergeant Pazelic was on the gun. He was in the gunner's position there, and I was sleeping in between the trails, and he reached back and tapped me, and I got up and looked, and he pointed down the range, and it was about a couple hundred yards down there with some troops moving toward us. Then we identified them as Japanese. It was about 10 or 12 of them, half of them on one side of the road and half of them on the other side of the road. They were coming toward us. And I'm glad I was with Sergeant Pazelic because he knew what to do. He needed to wait until they got real close. And I said, when are they going to shoot? When are they going to shoot? And finally I had loaded a canister round in there already, and as soon as they got within about 25, 30 yards, he started opening them up, and I started loading more and more. About 5 or 6 canisters in there real fast, and he shot them. In about a couple of minutes, everything was over. And they wasted that whole bunch out there. And we didn't know what happened until after the war, or after the, I don't know who it was, but the intelligence told us that there was a battalion looking to contact, one Japanese battalion wanted to contact another battalion to consolidate with another battalion. And they got off on the wrong road, and they didn't know where they were going, and they had this advance guard out in front for safety. And when they got hit, when we wiped them out, well, they knew not to. They knew they were on the wrong road. They weren't trying to attack us. They were trying to get with that other unit. But if they had gone into our defensive position, there would have been a battle between the two battalions, 3rd Battalion, the Light Battalion, and our battalion. In Manila, we were the first unit to get into downtown Manila. The 1st Cavalry had done their raid on the internment camp at San Tomas, but we entered Manila on one of the main streets, Rosal Avenue, and we were going in down Rosal Avenue. It was the main drag, north and south street, and there was hundreds of Japanese on the street, on the sidewalk, waving at us and welcoming us, and we were, oh boy, this is like Paris going down. But as soon as we got down to what they call the Chinatown area, all hell broke loose. There was men firing from a overhead, I guess it's sort of a balcony overlook on the second floor, and there was our rifle troops were taking cover and returning fire, and we got our 37 millimeter. I was loading, Sergeant, and the gunner there, he laid it on there and fired 2 or 3 high explosive rounds into that balcony there, and squad leader, Sergeant Pazelic, said, "Lewis, grab your carbine and come with me." Well, I grabbed my carbine. I didn't say where we're going and when we're going to get back or nothing. You just grab your carbine and go with him. And so we went up to that building and climbed up, went up the stairs into that area where we had just fired, and we saw a family of cluttered, all cluttered up. They're Chinese people, and we asked the Japanese there. They said, "No, when you started firing, they all run out the backside. They run out the back." And so we made a search of the building, and went down the hall there, and almost in the bathroom there. We looked at the bathroom, and there was a bathtub there, and looked in there, and there was a small pig in there, live pig. They were hiding that from the Japanese. I guess they're going to have a little feast of some sort. So we went back to our guns, and at that time the Japanese had stored a lot of their gasoline and bombs and everything in the Chinese sector. They knew that we would not bomb the city, and they were taken out of their airfields. They stored it in there, and when we had made our advance, they started setting a fire to all the buildings had the containers, and everything started blowing up. So we had to withdraw. We had to withdraw about 8 or 10 blocks. We kept going back and going back and going back until we was actually about 10 blocks back. And all that area where we was the Chinatown was completely burnt out. And I don't know that poor Chinese family got out or not. I don't know.
I mean, what did it look like, all the explosions?
Oh, it's terrifying. You don't know. The fires and explosion. We got back in about 8 or 10 blocks, and we stopped there. It seemed that be the end of it. We had a little break in there, a little break, nothing happening, and we were there on the street, and a nice lady come out. We had our gun right there on the street. A nice lady come out there with her daughters. She had 2 or 3 daughters there, and they brought us coffee. Now their coffee is not real coffee. They make some kind of substitute coffee out of rice. They roast it or something. I don't know what it is, but it was hot and warm. And we had a good conversation with them. It was, and that little lady, a lady adopted our gun squad. You're my sons. And from then on, we always had a place to go to visit. Oh, our house is always your home. She owned the building there. She had quarters upstairs, living quarters upstairs, and downstairs she rented out to a restaurant and a beauty shop down there. So he was a middle class and wealth. And so we were she was our mom and we were her son, so we had a place to go. When we went into Manila, we'd always visit her and her family. And we went on one trip to a resort there for the hot bath resort there with them. And when we left, she gave us a big party and there was 3 of us left. The squad leader had gone home, and then one of the Hadlik of the ammo there, he had duty somewhere else, but she gave a go-away party and gave all 3 of us gold rings, little gold rings. Filipino gold is kind of a reddish color. It's not the quality that we have, I think. But it's little gold rings with little kind of scrolls on them. And they were the people there fell in love with the Filipinos. They just. When I left there, I got a big going-away party, but I didn't get a going-away party when I got home. Outside of the family, nobody else gave a big rat.
What do you remember about the civilian casualties that you saw in the Philippines?
Civilian casualties, the word out is that there was 4 civilians killed for every GI that was killed. They would, when we were fighting in their area, they shot everything. All civilians were supposed to stay indoors, and anybody on the street would be shot, And there was one incident where the family told me that they knew that, and they were trying to control their children to stay inside. But one little girl, she wanted to go and visit the other family, and she ran out in the streets. Lovely little 8-year-old girl was gunned down by the Japanese, and it was not uncommon to see dead bodies laying on the street when you're attacking the position, and you might see children lying down, thieves. And I didn't see it, but some of the street fighters saw it. They'd go into a building, and it'd be Japanese fighting from the building. They'd go into the building, and they would find dead civilians, sometime with women with their heads shot, heads cut off, laying in there. They didn't like to use ammunition. Ammunition was short supply there, so they used their sabers and bayonets as much as possible in killing the civilians. Yeah, I knew the family, and what happened, I drove a lady over to see her brother, who was a free priest, and we took along this friend that she was going to visit. And the little girl, when we got over to the church, she started crying and screaming. And we found out what's wrong with her. She thought she had seen that little girl that got killed. That she recognized some little girl as her. That was it's just one instance of thousands of instances like that.
Can you talk to me about your experiences under Japanese artillery fire?
Japanese didn't have too much artillery fire. They didn't use. We were fighting mostly in Manila, the Navy. The Army had decided that to not try to defend Manila. They chose to move out to the hills and fight from the hills, and told the admiral there, the high admiral, Yamashita was the Army general, and he told the admiral there to destroy whatever you can. Destroy whatever you can and move out, said you. But that crazy admiral, he wanted to stay there and fight to the last man. He wanted to destroy as much as he can, kill as many people, and then die, either commit suicide or die fighting. And they all died one way or the other. Very few would, the only prisoners you'd get was maybe one that got wounded or something and couldn't.
When you came home after the war,
Yeah.
did you have difficulties readjusting to civilian life?
Only adjustment I had was you're used to living with 20 or 30 men in a barracks, or usually all together with a bunch of people, you know. And getting back on the farm, it was so quiet. It's kind of scary sometimes.
Did loud noises bother you?
Loud noise never bothered me. My brother, he was cautiously, and it was Christmas time when I got back there, and we used fireworks at Christmas other than New Year's. We don't use firecrackers New Year, we use them Christmas. And he was telling the children not to fire their firecrackers around me, and don't start talking to him about the war. Don't ask him about the war or anything. My family thought that I would go to pieces or something, but a lot of things I wanted to tell them, but they didn't. I started talking about something and they would change the subject, you know. Nobody wanted to listen to anything.
If you started to talk about the war,
Yeah.
they would change the subject?
Oh, yeah.
Was it just your family, or was a lot of people like that?
Family, and I didn't have too much contact with a lot of other people. And
I mean, what's it like when you've gone through a war and you've come home and all you want to do is just share some of your experiences and no one wants to listen?
it's confusing, and what you do, you look for some other soldiers. Like my friend that came back about the same time I did, and he was in Europe, and so we'd exchange war stories over there. He'd tell me about what happened over there, and I'd tell him what happened over here, over in the Pacific, and we had a good relation there, and we had a lot of, on the farm there, we had a lot of people, soldiers and sailors returning there, so we would talk to them, and we'd share a lot of stories.
Did you have nightmares after the war?
No, I never had a nightmare. I've had dreams, but they never amounted to real nightmares.
Can you tell me about some of your dreams?
Oh, dreams! One dream I had. I dreamed I was at on the outpost, one of our outposts there, and we had. I was the only one left there. Someone was all run off and left me, and I was the only one left there, me and a little dog, and I was hiding in a cave, and I knew, hoping the Japanese wouldn't find me, and they was walking all around me, and I was hoping the little dog wouldn't bark. So that's about the only one I can remember. A hand was on the dog. If he started barking, I was gonna choke him. I said, I don't want to choke this dog, but I got to.
Sergeant Lewis, could you talk to me about your memories of the Manila Hotel?
Manila Hotel is on in the port area of Manila, and it was the former home of General MacArthur. He had the penthouse up there, and we would always. It always came to in our talk, getting to Manila, and we're going to see that Manila hotel and find out where MacArthur lived. And my gun squad, we were right on the in the Bay Area there, and not far from the port area, and the a jeep came by. There was an intelligence officer that I used to work with the intelligence section when I was doing the scouting for the patrols, and he said, "Lewis, you want to go with me? They've taken Manila Hotel, and we'll be the first one to take a look at it." So I went over and got in his jeep, and we went up there, and there were some soldiers out in the area there, and on the ground floor, but no one had gone up there. And we went up there, but everything was out of there. The furniture and gone. It was just, and the Japanese people, troops had been using it as a billet, and it was just trash. And we went all the way up there, and nothing there. And then when we came back out, and looked in the swimming pool, and there was, I think, 2 or 3 dead Japs floating in the swimming pool over there, and that was it. But
was it at one time? It was a very nice hotel.
Oh yeah, it was a place to be. I think he and another general, I wasn't Wainwright, but another general, they shared the top floors there with the Manila Hotel.
Can you tell me about your memories of Rosal Avenue?
Rosal Avenue, yeah. Rosal Avenue is the main street coming in from the north side, and it's just in the lower part, before you get to the Pasig River, that was the Chinese area there, and the Japanese were very cruel to the Japanese because they were at war with the Japanese, and the Japanese general Yamashita, he was tried in for war crimes, and one of his crimes was when he was in Singapore, he had 500 Japanese Japanese merchants murdered. So they had a hard time there in any places the Japanese were in control.
What life advice do you want to give to future generations?
Future generations is the old Chinese word gung ho. That means work together. We should have all these people working together to make a better country and to get along a lot better.
If you were to give me some advice for my life, what would you tell me? I'm the same age you were when you were overseas.
My advice to you and most of the younger generation is find something that you like to do and do it until you can't do it anymore. Don't look forward to retirement. I retired when I was 83. And I had to do that because eyesight was gone.
Were you afraid of getting killed when you were in combat?
Oh, certainly. It's always the thought is in your mind, but you are busy with your job and you don't think too much about getting killed. You think about doing your job.
Well, what do you want to say to all the men who were killed overseas in the war? What would you want them to know?
that there's so many of them appreciate what they have done that every time I walk around anywhere now, I thank you for your service, and they would the ones that really need to be thanked as the ones that are not here anymore.
What kind of person do you want to be remembered as?
What I want to be remembered at is the old guy that did the best he could.
You got to get a little more serious for me. When your friends and your family think about you, Mr. Lewis, what kind of person, would you want them to think of you as?
A good old Unc. Unc is short for uncle. I'm called the Unc by my family. Yes, I have done my best to be honest. I don't lie unless I have to tell a woman that she looks good when she's don't look so good. I don't steal. I never stole anything. And I've never did. I believe in the Ten Commandments. I think that's a good guide to live by. Except for telling a falsehood. You got to tell a falsehood once in a while to keep out of trouble and to make the women happy. I like to be remembered as a World War II veteran.
Are you glad that you served?
What?
Are you proud to have served?
Yes, I am. I am proud of people. Really proud of the association I've had with other people during my career. Wait a minute, vine is one that's hanging down from a tree, and it's got long, stringy talons there with hooks, with thorns that when you're moving through the jungles there, they hang into your clothing, and you can't go forward. You hang into your old fatigue clothing, and you can't go forward, and you have to say, "Wait a minute, I'm hung up on a wait a minute, vine."
Would it ever hurt you?
No, if you're without clothing, yeah, it could. Yeah, I've seen Marines beat up with those things riding those ram tracks through the jungles. Oh, the pea monkeys. They're the old sloths that we renamed them pea monkeys because they can really wet you down. They get excited, and when you're going through the jungles, you may get sprayed with them.
Were you ever sprayed?
I got one little spurt one time. I didn't get too much of it.
Would people kill the monkeys?
No, they were cute little fellas. They were pretty little things. And sometimes you show your squad leader the picture of your girlfriend you got home, and he was likely to say, "Why, she's cute as a pea monkey." They were pretty little things.
Did you write letters back home?
Oh, yeah.
Who did you write to?
I wrote mostly to my family and to a couple of girls that I had acquaintance with. I had no true love back there waiting for me.
What would you write them about?
Well, everything was censored there. The platoon leader censored, and he sent it to the base censor. Then if he didn't take out something that should be taken out, he could be fined. So you had everybody. You couldn't send out anything about the military. It's just stuff you felt, It's, the stuff that you ate and what you did, and it wasn't much to write about. I was never wounded. I got a little scratch with a grenade when they were throwing grenades at our position, but it didn't amount to anything. The platoon medic, he took care of it. I pulled up my pants, and he took a tweezer and got that little sliver out and put the monkey blood on it. Monkey blood, what we call mercurochrome, and said that'll take care of it. And if you want to, you can go to the aid station tomorrow and let them change the bandage, and you get a Purple Heart. But I didn't want a Purple Heart.
Why didn't you want a Purple Heart?
If I get a Purple Heart, my family think I'm laying there dead or someplace. I took a picture one time. I had my hands behind me, thought like a parade rest, and one of my sisters thought my hands had been blown off or something. So I don't believe in a Purple Heart for minor injuries like that. Maybe something that disables you or puts you in hospital, or you should get a Purple Heart, but not for little scratches and stuff like that.
Who threw the grenades at you?
It was the Japanese Navy. The Navy had two naval officers and a Marine. I guess he was the Royal Marine. He was one about 6 foot tall, and they had to be 6 foot, I think, get in the Royal Marines.
Shorty, the other scout. Was he the only man from your unit that was killed?
Yeah, he was the only one in our platoon that was killed.
How old would you say he was when he was killed?
Oh, he was very young. He tried to get in the Army, and they wouldn't take him because he was small and very young, and he finally got into the National Guard, and then they were mobilized, so he was with us, and he was a good man. I mean, a good scout, and he would sometimes say, "Lewis, they have you on patrol. You want me to take it?" He liked to get out there and in the jungles, and I'm sure glad that he wasn't with me when I got close to being killed.
What do you mean? When the bullets went over your head?
Yeah.
Well, why are you glad that he wasn't with you?
I'm glad that he wasn't on that patrol. I'm getting mixed up here. I'm glad he wasn't taking my place. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm glad he wasn't taking my place when he was and he got killed. I'm glad he wasn't taking my place when he got killed. I'd feel bad about that.
Oh, I see. Did you ever let him go in your place?
No, I never did. He offered to, but no, I never did. I felt like it sometimes, no. They covered him up with a poncho. That's the way we didn't have body bags, and we covered him up with a poncho and brought him in.
What was his name?
Sapinski. I don't know. It was Polish, and I don't know exactly the spelling of it. Sapinski. We call him Shorty. We all call him Shorty. His name was Shorty. They were on a recon mission up along the river there, and they run into a larger group of Japs, and they got into a firefight, and he was with one of our other soldiers there, Lane, I can't remember the name right now. And he said that he came back, he told the sergeant, said that he came back and he said, he came to the sergeant and said he had we'd lost Shorty up there. He said a burst of that Namu gun, automatic rifle, had almost blown his head off, the whole head off of it. It must have been real close in. I don't know.
Sir?
Yeah.
The story about Anna, that was your first or your second Silver Star?
That was the first one, the Jones Bridge, yeah.
Did you see the Jones Bridge destroyed?
No, I did not. Everything was smoky up there and everything, and they had blown out the center span of the bridge. We tried to save it before they blew it up, but unsuccessful. They stopped us. They mined the bridge. They started to mine the street leading into it, but they didn't completely mine it. But then they had a heavy fire coming from the old post office, the main post office there building, and it was a mess. We got a lot of wounded there.
What do you remember about the wounded?
One story about the wounded I remember, we took a fellow out there, and he came over with me, but he got assigned to the rifle company, and I got assigned to the mortar platoon at that time, and to the anti-tank. And we hauled him out. He had a sort of a minor knee, something in the knee, I think. And later, and a few months later, we were on the Old Spanish Trail by the Lady Pass, and I'd driven a Jeep and I delivered some mail up there and went to pick up the mail down below and brought it up there, and I got up there, they had him on the hood of a Jeep, and they were giving him IVs there and working on him. And he said, "Lewis," said, "you won't have to rescue me anymore." He said, "I got one of these $1 million wounds." "$1 million wounds?" He said, "Yeah." Now, if you don't know what $1 million wound is, that's one that's serious enough to get you back to the States, but not serious enough to cause permanent injury. And so we never saw him no more. So evidently he got out of the combat area forever.
Talk to me about the importance of dry socks.
Dry socks. The dry socks is you got wet every day. We were you got in the Solomons, you got the little shower coming up every day. And in February, I think it's a rainy day. It might rain every day there. And in order to have anything dry, you had to keep it in your mess kit for to eat out of when you had to get a hot meal. And so we weren't getting any hot meals there. We were eating out of a long time. We were eating out of C rations and K rations. And we carried our socks in there so we'd have some dry socks. Also, when we got a picture of our lovelies at home, we put the pictures in there to keep them dry. That's the only way you could keep any pictures that you might keep a small picture in your wallet dry, but if you got a postcard size picture like that one, you'd want to carry it in your mess kit. So that's the only way you're going to keep it dry.
When the story about Anna, the wounded soldiers were all Americans?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Wounded were all from that rifle company, a fire battalion that was trying to take the bridge.
But they're American, the wounded?
Yeah, they were American.
How many would you say there were?
20 or 30, I guess.
And were you guys under fire as you were carrying them?
Yeah, we had crossfire. We had to go three blocks back to the battalion aid stations who delivered them. And then they got evacuated from there by the evac hospital. And there was a small amount of crossfire on the bridges there. So you go across there.
How many trips back and forth did you personally make?
We made two. We made two trips. Anna was killed on the second trip.
Did you meet her before this, or you'd only heard about her after?
No, I knew her before we started out. We had before we loading everybody up. Well, we had a conversation there, and
What do you talk about?
oh, it's just she's telling me she was a nurse from the battalion, and told me about the saving her uniform and, or burning her uniform or hiding it so the Japanese wouldn't know she would been working with the Americans or the Japanese, or she was a part of the Filipino army, but she was a second lieutenant. They had the same insignia and the same training that we had.
So you and your sergeant, you saw Anna and the other Filipinos trying to help these wounded Americans, and then you went to go help them.
We went up there to help, and then we saw them when we got on it. They were busy getting those doors off the buildings and the wall fence there. They take them off the fence. They were heavy doors. They were bamboo with a kind of a net thing in between there like that, and it was made good litters, not too heavy.
And then, did you guys have the Jeep, or were you carrying this all on foot?
On foot, yeah. They had the battalion had 3 litter jeeps that carried 3, and they carried 3 people, 2 above and 1 down below. But the battalion aid station wouldn't let them go up that street because the Filipinos had reported that it was mined, but the street was not mined. They dug some holes and they had the explosive over on the sidewalks, but we moved so fast they didn't have time to put them in there. So the streets were passable, and after I delivered, after my friend, the Filipino fellow, and I delivered Anna to the Filipino first aid station down there, well, I got a hold of one of the drivers, and then asked him about the jeeps. He said the colonel still wouldn't let him drive. I said, it's not mine. We've been walking down the street, so I said, we need to take one of these jeeps and go back up there. And he said, I can't go. I said, well, it's 45 I have on my back. It says, you're going to go. So I was full of sweat and Anna's blood, so he didn't want to back talk to me. So he and I drove back up there and loaded up 3 people and brought them back. We were then getting to the minor wounded. We have got all the seriously wounded out before then. And as soon as we got back, they saw that the street was cleared, everything, and the other 2 litter jeeps went up there and started moving the rest of the troops back, and the battalion commander, the battalion surgeon, for me hijacking that litter jeep, he wanted to court-martial me. And the captain that had those wounded soldiers wanted to give me the Medal of Honor. So I wound up with the Silver Star. It was not. The commanding officer thought Sergeant Whelan and I had got these Filipinos to do all this stuff, but it was that little nurse that did everything.
You mentioned that you had Anna's blood on you.
Yeah.
How did you have her blood on you?
I picked her up and was carrying her to the aid station there. And then, not to the aid, I started taking it, and then she was like one of these we saw this morning out here, she was small. And then the larger, the Filipino that was going with us, he was larger than I, and he took her the rest of the way. But I started out with her, and and I got all the blood from her body when I.
Was she conscious at all?
Pardon?
Was she conscious?
No, she was not conscious at all.
And what do you remember about some of the wounded GIs who you guys picked up?
I don't. I don't recall any of them, but it's the. They were mostly. I think they were mostly given sedatives and what to make morphine and so forth. They were mostly given something to. I could see a leg bandage, or I could see a face bandage, but I didn't know it seriously. So they were bandaging them up there, but they had no way to move them out of that.
And how heavy was the fire that you guys were under as you were transporting these wounded?
It was just scattered fire. It didn't amount to much. They just shooting across the street there in our direction. And they wouldn't take an aim at any person. They saw something moving, they throw some shots at it. I had very little close in combat. And one of my moments of close combat was we were at our 37 millimeter on the street, guarding the street there, and we had always trouble with the Japanese behind us because we moved so fast down through the city that they got stranded behind us, and we had to look at our rear and to our front. So I was a driver, so my job was mostly to keep an eye on the back while the rest of the people were on the guns. And I heard something around the gun there, and I looked. I went over to take a look, and I saw this tall Japanese. I guess he must have been a Royal Marine. He was standing there. He's trying to sneak by our gun position, and then I encountered him, and he had a what they call a Nambu gun. It's automatic, full automatic, and semi-automatic assault rifle. And he brought that off of his shoulder and pointed at me, and I had beat him with my carbine. I was faster than he was with the carbine, and I shot him there, and he run to the front and trying to continue his way through our position to get back to their lines, and he stumbled and fell into the bushes in front of and by the gun, and then he just lay there. And at that time there were two more Japanese in the buildings, little outbuildings in the back. They started throwing hand grenades. None of them had any rifles or pistols, evidently, and they started throwing hand grenades at us. But to our good luck, as the range they were falling short. They couldn't reach all the way to us. But a friend of mine came over from a rifle squad, and we decided he and I would go out and we would, we call it recon by fire. We go shooting into those buildings and see if we can get any movement. We were pretty sure they didn't have any rifles with them. They only had a hand grenade, so we could hear them moving around. We could direct the fire at them. So we were doing that. We were shooting our rifles, and I had a carbine, and he had the rifle, and we were shooting in there. And when he was shooting, he fired his last round in his M1 rifle, and when you fire your last round, the clip comes out and makes a big zing like that. And they heard that, or they saw it. The Japanese saw that, and the officer, as I learned later, was a captain in the Navy. He was a captain in the Navy by rank. And he came out, the Japanese captain came out with a saber, and he was about to run my friend in with it while he was trying to unload, trying to reload. But I killed him with my carbine. I emptied my carbine into him, and he fell there. He didn't get to cause any damage to my friend. And then it's about this, just a moment or two later, we heard a big bang inside, and the other, I assumed to be an officer, he blew himself up with a carbine, with a, beg your pardon, with a grenade, and either was trying to throw it or commit suicide. And they usually, a lot of the Japanese would keep a grenade for them to kill themselves other than being captured. And so we had three Japanese, two had been shot, and one had blown himself up with a grenade. So I came back. I got the captain's insignia off of his blouse and his dog tag, so I thought the intelligence might need it. And I showed my squad leader. I said, "We just killed a 3-star general." He said, "That's not a 3-star general. Those 3 stars are for Navy captain." So, well, at least we stopped all the grenade throwing, and we continued our mission as guarding the road that we were supposed to, and we were finished with that action there, and we just lay down and try to get some sleep. And it's hard for you to imagine anybody that just killed 2 people laying down and going to sleep. What you do, lay down on the street. You got a blanket. The only thing you got is a blanket to sleep on the street. And you got a blanket, huddle up in your blanket and go to sleep. And then my squad leader, Lewis, I hear some moaning out there. The Jap you killed is still alive. Really? Yeah, he said, somebody's got to do something. Well, I said, nobody's going to approach that Jap until the morning. If he's still alive, I'll approach him from a different position. He's still clutching a Mbu rifle. And I'm not going to go near him. I'm not going to allow anybody to go near him until daybreak. If it's after daybreak, I'll see if he's still alive. We can see if we can get some attention for him, some medical attention. But nobody will come out here and treat him at night. And even if they did, I wouldn't let them get there. Well, somebody's going to have to take care of him. Well, I said, well, I went out and like finishing off a animal in pain, you go out and finish off a enemy Japanese soldier who is in severe pain. And let's see things that happened in war. I approached him from the rear and not too close to where I would have been observed by him and be able to receive. Sometimes the enemy will lay there and groan, and when you go to rescue him or treat him, they'll shoot you. They'll have the weapon ready to shoot. Even though they're wounded, they still have that ability to shoot you. And so I finished him off in a safe position where I wouldn't be exposed to him shooting me. I was about I'd say 10 or 15 yards there, and it was dark. It was dark at night. I knew where he fell, and I could hear the moans. And I fired several rounds into it. We start shooting sometime. We just finish up the clip. I don't know how many was left in there, in the magazine. But then I went back and finished my nap. Soldier I shot there, he was the lead he was the head of the other other two Japanese, I think, were both officers. I know one was a captain. And I think the other one was an officer too. He was actually sort of a bodyguard. He was a tall guy, and I assumed he was a Royal Marine as a bodyguard for those two officers. And he was the first one shot. And when he was shot, the other two officers, the other officers, they started throwing hand grenades at our position and were falling short.
How far away were you from that Navy captain?
I was a little further than him. He was, I'd say, 5 yards for him. I was probably about 10 yards from about double the distance from him. The soldier with the bamboo gun was about 5 to 10 paces away from me. The one that blew himself up, no, he was in a shed-like thing with open, a storage thing with open windows, like an open window there, and I could see inside there, but all I did saw a big explosion, and the captain, I looked in there and I just saw a body there had been blown apart there, and blood and guts. It's kill or be killed, and more of them you kill, the better chance you have of not being killed. That was the code of that we live by.